Everyone, we're on page in the Maamar from 1934 that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in Glubaka. We're on page 183. I want to just briefly recap a very important idea that the Rebbe spoke about in this Maamar yesterday. Good morning, Shmuel. When we learn Torah, when we learn Gemara, when we learn, Musar Sfarim and Pirkei Avos, and we're used to one term, and the term is Yetzer Tov and Yetzer HaRa. That's generally what we're accustomed to. And we translate, generally, Yetzer means an inclination. In other words, when a person is inclined to do something good, we say it comes from the Yetzer Tov. He does something bad, it's from the Yetzer HaRa. And although that's true, in Nigla, in Talmud, and in the normal way of learning, that's emes 100%. Nevertheless, Chassidus, and in this particular case, in this Maamar, what we learned yesterday is that the word Yetzer HaRa comes from the word tziyur, which means a form, an image. And that the Yetzer HaRa begins in the brain, not in the heart. It's the Tziyur Ra, or the Tziyur Tov, that is the Ikar, that's the primary aspect and drive of the inclination. Which is a fascinating idea, because if once something is in the heart, once something is in emotion, is in the emotion stage, it's very hard to change. Let's not kid ourselves. It's very hard. I mean, Tanya is all about that, right? Moyach shalat al alev. But nevertheless, it's a rough and tough avodah. So the Alter Rebbe and the Rabbeim after the Alter Rebbe, they have an approach. And they say, if you begin, you hear this? If you begin by working on your moach, on your tziyur, on the image and form that you created with your brain, with your mind, and you make a change over there, what will follow will be much healthier, much better. And when we look at Yetzer Tov and Yetzer HaRa from this perspective, it also, I think, gives us more hope and more reality to the fact that we can make a change. So when someone says it's Yetzer HaRa, they mean Yetzer HaRa, it's the way I behave. And the answer is, I know you behave this way. I want to go to what we call in psychology, I want to go to the paradigm shift. I want to go to the machshava. I want to go to the intellect, to the brain. I want to deal with the issue from that perspective. And if I can make a difference over there, the result will be a better one. That's what we learned yesterday. The Tziyur Ra. Yes.
So just a quick question. I'm sorry. I know I wasn't the show yesterday.
Yeah.
As opposed to what? In other words, how would a person make a change otherwise? If a person starts to make a change in let's say in the brain, like what would be an example an
example is a change in behavior. The different what we're talking about is the difference between making a change in behavior versus a change in the thought process. A behavior. A person is drinking a lot of alcohol. It's very hard to stop if you just behavior. It's addicted, or even if it's not addicted, it's not right. Now, if you're able to make a change in the way you think about drinks and alcohol and who you are and your family and Hashem. And you begin with making the what we call the brain surgery. The brain surgery over here, you'll see a difference. I think the Jewish psychiatrist Abraham Maslow, 1960s. Those that are familiar, This was one of his theories and ideas. I think some say it even goes back to William James of the early 1900s. I did a little research on that years ago. Whether it's exactly alike, not alike, I'll let the Mevinim have a pilpul in that. But the idea is the change the way you think. I mean, it's basic Tanya 101, right? But what I'm saying is that in this Maamar, the Rebbe is applying this thought to the Yetzer. You understand? Yeah. He's talking about to the Yetzer. In other words, there's a part in the brain that already is connected to inclination. We're not talking about abstract intellect. We're not talking about that now. We're talking about that part of the brain that already is oriented towards behavior. Even there, you could make a change. Okay, so we have three domains. We have pure intellect, removed kind of from behavior. We have intellect that's already associated with behavior. And the third thing we have is behavior. And it seems from what we're learning that the Rebbe is right now, at this point, he was identifying and dealing with that middle stage of intellect as it's associated to behavior. And the result, Moshe, is a powerful one. So, Hillel, this is his field, I guess, but I would think that, the AA program and the steps, it's like they give you these ideas to think about and repeat and to make a change in the behavior beginning with certain ideas that you change. So submitting to a higher power, I think that's one of them, right? Submitting to a higher power. So if you understand that it's not just about mimicking words, say 55 times, submitting to higher power, submitting to higher power. That's ridiculous. That's nothing's going to change from saying something 60 times. Okay? That's another issue that we can discuss at another time, this whole approach of, mimicking words. No, change comes from understanding something and realizing this is no good for me or this is great for me. And you understand it. So, again, I'm not an expert in the 12-step program, but I would hope that when they say submitting to a higher power, they want you to think about and understand and realize what it means to submit to a higher power. Now, naturally, what's their idea of a higher power? We could debate that back and forth. But there's no question that it seems to me, Hillel, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that's the approach. Yes, Hillel?
I would just say, a raya to what you're saying, that the Lashon of the 12 steps is that, I think it's the second step, came to admit that a power greater than us could restore us to sanity. So came to admit seems to me to be a raya for a cognitive, for a...
that was the word I was looking for before, the cognition. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Abram Maslow speaks about the cognitions. Right, so, but let me ask you, is practically in the AA program steps, besides saying, do they train you how to come to admit?
Well, I mean, I think that the 12-step programs are one of the most successful sort of self-help communities ever, and they and the main ways that they work is you listen. People have the opportunity to sort of tell their stories. And then also you work with a sponsor, kind of a counselor, somebody who's been there before, like a peer counseling kind of approach. Usually somebody who's sort of farther along. So I would say very, very much so that it's kind of based on group support. It's based upon a series of easily digestible steps, manageable steps that are easy to understand, not abstract, and and on a combination of both group support and personal support.
Okay. Let's go back into the text now, page 183. Let's go to the middle of the page. It's probably about 10, 12 lines down. One more point that he spoke about at the end yesterday, we left off, is the chesed. We talk about chesed. To do chesed, you need someone else. And he brings a raya from Avraham Avinu that he was, the epitome of chesed, yet he needed to have those people, those Arabs, to bring him in to his tent to do chesed. And the line, actually, it's close to the bottom, 6 lines to the bottom. Avraham ha'yinodiv b'nafshay liyois ki hamides yikorin lezulasim. Avraham was generous with his nefesh, with his soul. Why? Because emotions, ikoron lezulasim. Their primary mode of operation requires someone else. Zulas means an other. Someone else to do chesed with. Okay, so again, we're 6 lines from the bottom, 183, the last word. Omnom, however, zeu pu'ulas hamida. When we say that the midas are primarily require an other to bestow the emotion, the carrot upon, the Rebbe says this is what we identify as, and you could make a quote around it or underline it, pu'ulas hamida. It's the activity of the emotion, of the midah. He shayocha, this aspect of the midah is relevant, is shayches rak im hazulas, only if there's an other. You can't do a pu'ula of a midah, Yaakov, to the wall. It just doesn't work. The wall doesn't respond to your midah. But you can only do a midah to someone, to a person. And I would even go further, probably to an animal too, because they have they have feelings, they can react. So you could do, but of course, best is the human species. Avo Tzir Hamida, so here you see he's distinguishing between Pu'ulas Hamida and Tzir Hamida. However, the image and form of the Midah, Shaykh Himatz Megam Kain, Moshe is relevant to yourself. The activity of emotion requires another. But the tzir, the format, the image, the idea of the midah can be experienced within yourself, even if there isn't someone else to share your idea with. Uve emes, and in truthfully speaking, true. This image, when it comes to bad midos, or bad conduct, they're very bad illness, natural illness, I'll explain, by many people, very, very important line that sounds like French, but what he says here is, and this answers a lot of things, why people have idiosyncrasies, shtick, stuff. You ask yourself, and about yourself, why do I got this narishkeit? The answer is because you have a certain tzir ra, or a tzir tov, and it triggers you, and that's tivis, that comes natural to you. Now, the thing is that if it's unhealthy, or even if it's healthy but you want it to be healthier, you have the key to make a change in it through changing the cognition. But why are certain people certain times, and all of us in different ways, why do we have some ra choili betivis kama bnei yodam? Look what the Rebbe says: binyonim shoydim mishunim, in all kinds of strange and weird ways. That's what shoydim and mishunim means. Yeah, but not Yoni, not mishigas. It's like natural mishigas. It's like you come out of your mother's womb with that mishigas.
So does that mean that the person literally, like what Rabbi Delphin, what you just said, a person's born with a certain natural, he's wired a certain way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave this person he's wired a certain way.
Okay. But the fact is that wire might need to be fine-tuned.
Okay. Sure. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
No one's saying, yes, Yonason.
No, I said that the Yetzer HaRa is given to the person. Was given to the person.
Okay, let's see another line to see how I hear what you're saying. V'heim heima, and these mishigasim hahirurim royim. But the Rebbe now says something different, Yodin. He says these bad thoughts. In other words, it's not just a mishigas, as Moshe said. You're wired that way. It's you embellish that wire by thinking about it and you scheme it, as Yonason was saying with the Shem Tziyurim Mashe'odim Mitzayir La'atzmai. It's the imagery which man forms, becoming yonim in many issues. Ki'ilu oisam bepoil. Fantasy. It sounds like he's talking about fantasy. That a person fantasizes how he's going to act out whatever he fantasizes about. But where is it? It's not in the poil, in the activity. It's in the tziyur, in the form, in the image. And these thoughts and are very difficult and very bad b'yoser. As the sages say, top of the next page, 184. Hidhure Aveda Koshim Aveda. The Alter Rebbe quotes this in Tanya. Hidhure Aveda. Thoughts about doing Aveda are actually Koshim, worse than Aveda. Why? What's the simple pshat? You're doing Aveda, you did it. You know you did it, and now you try to do tshuva. Hidhurim is like, wait a minute, I didn't do an Aveda. I didn't actually do the sin. I just thought about the sin. So you're always seem to be justifying that position. Say Chazal. Yes.
But don't we usually refer to hirurei, the word hirurei as in hirurei tshuva?
Well, you could use the word hiru means a thought, thinking of. So if there's hirurei tshuva, thoughts of doing tshuva, and then there's hirurei aveda. So the word hirur is a generic word. It's neutral. It's not a bad word. It means thoughts. In this case, he's applying it, Yoni, to the Yetzer HaRa. So he's saying that the position of the Yetzer HaRa, as it begins in the mind, is the position of the fantasy where you constantly justify, I didn't do it yet, and if I didn't do it yet, big deal. It's just in my mind. So the Chazal say, Hidhuri Aveda, Koshim Me Aveda. And Musar Sforim, and Chassidus, but there's a lot about this in Musar Sforim, that Hidhurim are very, very damaging to a person. And again, the Gemara says, Moshe, Koshim, worse. Why? And that's like I told you, because in Aveda you did it, you know you did it, and now, you know. But here, you're always satisfying yourself. I didn't do it yet. So what? Why can't I do, Yaakov, you want to say something?
Yeah, that it works the other way too. In HaRa, I'm preparing to do a mitzvah.
Yes.
I haven't done a mitzvah yet, but I'm preparing it in
Right. And thank you for bringing that up. That's absolutely true. There's ideas brought in the Sfarim that hachana lemitzvah is in a way greater than the mitzvah. Preparation, why? Because you're constantly preparing yourself. It means you're constantly working on yourself. You did a mitzvah. No, you did it, invite the gefahren. Let next, right? But if you constantly be making yourself, they say the joke, the Jew is always in a mode of achana mitzvah, and he doesn't do the mitzvah. That's not good. You got to do the bottom line and say, I'm going to go to the mikveh, I'm going to learn chassidus, I'm going to learn musar, and then I'm going to daven after chatzos. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, the nakuda is, so hachana is important, but we should never forget b'poel mamish. Let's see what he says in Yiddish here. 184, top line. V'nikra, a person who is in the mode of Yetzer, of Hirurim, is called Atzulazan Hearts. The word in Yiddish, Tzulazan, means like melted, loose, a loose heart. Was Tzulast die Hearts, he allows his heart to be loose, Lashkia Atzmoi, to immerse himself in his mind and in his ideas, bidvorim pchusim v'gasim, in low life type of thoughts and corporeal coarse type of issues that he thinks about. He doesn't just mean sexual issues. He means other type of indulging in food. I'm going to have a steak with this and that on top, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be whatever. That's not an Aveda. It means it's Baltaiva. But anyway, V'chai, the Rebbe says, V'chai b'hatziur. This person, he lives with the fantasy. Hahu. Ki'iluhu bipoel. As if he's actually doing. So the fantasy actually is so real to him that he's like doing it bipoel. You mentioned that hachana. I remind myself of Rabbi Twersky, who passed away several months ago, he speaks about this idea, probably it's in many of his books. I think he even told me this once, that he would do hypnosis on patients, Rahman al-Islam, even patients who were very, very ill and diagnosed with illness that medical science couldn't cure. Anyway, and he would hypnotize them and bring them back to a state of being when they were a young boy or a young girl. He said in the farms and in the green pastures of Milwaukee where he grew up. And he would ask them, what do you remember? And they would speak about how nice they were playing ball with their siblings and friends and the trees and the grass. And in other words, what I understood, he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not an expert in this field, but what I understood is that he brought them to a place of tzir, of fantasy. Don't quote me, that hypnosis is a fantasy. I don't know, so I'm just using my own words.
No, actually, I think that's a pretty good characterization. In that, but I would, instead of the word fantasy, I'd use the word imagination. Imagination,
okay.
The word really has the word image in it.
Right.
And it refers to kind of the mental faculty of visualization, to the formation of pictures in our mind's eye.
One second, and the word fantasy what does that word connotate?
Well, fantasy tends to connote like a more developed, like almost like a movie in your mind of doing something or having done something. I was reminded just now of a situation, a client I once had, who was a young, stay-at-home mother who'd grown up with television, and she was now home, I think, with 2 special needs children. It was a very difficult situation, and she began, and she lived for a certain daily television, like soap opera, and she began to sort of confuse her life with the life of the people on the television program. It was a kind of a mental deterioration. So, very much a case example of what we're talking about here.
Okay, Yashikoya.
That's a fantasy.
That's a fantasy.
Whereas, now, in hypnosis, the technique that you were describing of taking somebody back to a more pleasant earlier experience, it's called age regression, to go backward in time. And typically, for the therapeutic reason to do it would be to help somebody reconnect to some resource or something positive from the past that they could help them in the present.
Mm-hmm. So there was someone who was in pain today. If you could bring them back to a place where there was pleasure and not pain, yeah. And you remind me, that's what Rabbi Twersky said. That's what he said.
That's commonly done in pain management. Because one of the keys to pain management is to be able to sort of remove yourself from the situation. It's called the clinical term is dissociate, and it's something that's a natural part of the life of the mind. Both age regression is something we naturally do. It's a natural. We'll search in our past when we're going through something, memories and so on, for something to help us in the present, and the same as well.
Okay, so v'chai b'atzir ahu, and he lives in this imagination ki'ilu hu bepoil, as though it's actually happening. In addition to the fact that when he does this, he loses, God forbid, all of his powers and his soul. He's talking about because it's right. It's an imagination of ra, of bad. I told you once that I think that the Rebbe is alluding to what's brought, I believe, even in the Rambam and in other Svarim, that fantasies, or not fantasies, sorry, fantasies leading to, masturbation and waste of semen. The Chazal say it hurts all of your physical koiches. Now, don't ask me how to reconcile that with science. I'll let everyone come up answer that themselves. But the Chazal say that this is a too much of it, etc. is mechala. The word mechala means it destroys, right? So we're talking. First, he says it impacts you spiritually. It makes a very bad spiritual blemish. He says, but even more so that it's mechala kol koiches gufay. I think that's what he's alluding to. He doesn't say clearly, but that's, I believe, and it leads you to, God forbid, become like nuts, libilbul hadas, or confused, meshuggah, disturbed. V'zeh, look what he says further. V'zeh sipe lekama chaloyim royim. This is a cause why there are different bad illnesses. Bekame anoshim bechlal. In many people, in people, uvetzeirim bifrat. That's why I think he's talking about this issue, because in Chazal the term used for wasting of semen is called Chatas Neurim, which, by the way, is usually done in an acronym of Ches, final Nun. Ches, 2 dittos, final Nun, in Musar and Chassidus Svarim, is an acronym for Chatas, sins, Neurim, youthful sins. What youthful sins? Playing baseball and watching the World Series. I mean, what's Chatas Neurim? Chatas Neurim is a reference to wasting the semen, masturbation. Okay? So the Rebbe says here, Uvitzi'irim bifrat. Specifically, this issue, and we all know, this is something as young people we experience and struggle with and deal with. So the Rebbe says that this type of thinking and involvement, and he says, actualizing the fantasy, that's why I used the word fantasy earlier, Hillel, because I knew this was coming. But anyway, the Rebbe says this is very damaging. So this is kind of classical Yetzer HaRa 101 in the world of Musar and Chassidus. This issue that's been identified here. However, by the way, I want to say, many Baharim, many Lubavitcher students wrote to the Rebbe for a tikkun. They engaged, like normal teenagers, and they felt very guilty. They felt very bad, and they asked the Rebbe. They wrote to the Rebbe, and they asked him for a tikkun, a tshuva. What should they do? And the general, usual answer of the Rebbe was Hesach Hadas. That's number one. Divert your attention from this. Don't think about the fact, I did a sin. No. And the Rebbe said, then learn something by heart and memorize that. So that was like a proactive tikkun for the issue. But number one was stop thinking about it. Stop going over and saying, on this and this day I did this, and on this and this morning I did this, and this night I did this, and this is where I went. Hesach Hadas. You should just know that was the Rebbe's general approach to many things of transgressions, but also to this issue. Yes, Yonis, you want to say something?
Yeah. When it comes to a very bad psychological problem, they give you medication, and the medication causes you to deal, to be able to help, that you don't have the connection to the fantasy anymore.
I heard you, but I didn't pick up. I didn't pick up what you were saying. That what? What's the...
I said that the medication helps, the psychological medication.
But wait. I understand, but are you also suggesting taking medication to deal with these type of issues?
In very, very severe cases, yes.
Okay, I don't want to go there because I know that in certain yeshivas, and I heard about in Me'ashorim, I don't know, that this is something they do, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. I didn't learn this from my teachers, and I don't, but if you say in very bad cases, I don't know. I don't know. I never heard it in my years that people should take medication to deal with this issue. But if you say it, Hillel, are you familiar with this issue?
I think that it verges on the criminal to administer things like that. It's often done with prisoners. To do it with yeshiva students, it seems to me, would be verging on the criminal. I would think very harshly of it.
Right. Okay. Let's go further. The Rebbe said all of our discussion till now is about the Yetzer HaRa, which focuses on the midos and the part of the brain that's associated to the midos. Avo, Nefesh Bahamis, the term that we use in Chabad Chassidus, which is Nefesh Bahamis, Hini Korehu Baseichel. And that's your answer. Yoni, right? That question that you asked me 4 years ago. I remember the question. What's the difference between the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Yetzer HaRa? And the Rebbe answers in this Maamar that the Yetzer HaRa is primarily dealing with the Midas, and the Nefesh HaBahamis is the aspect, the way it's in the mind, in the Seichel. Aval kol sichloi hu binyonim, the Nefesh HaBahamis drive is binyonim achumnim shebegashmis, in the coarse part of the material. Asher kishmoi, just as the name indicates. Nefesh, quote, look at Nefesh HaBahami, the animal soul, Cain who? That's the way it is. Shumashuka binyonim chumnim, he's immersed in corporeal matter, Tafke, lisanik bohem, and seeks to pleasure himself through them, ulahaskil haskolos, and to come up with innovative ideas, ulischakim, and to scheme and use them, eich lahasik taivoisav, how to get his indulgences. Cain litoin kol minatainis. This also then leads to finding argumentation and defense mechanisms, rak b'shvil toivas atzmi achumri, just to benefit what he can benefit from. So the Rebbe says, so the process of the Nefesh HaBahamis is what? In the mind. How am I going to justify my shtick? That's Nefesh HaBahami. Right? So it's a process in the mind. It's a drive in the seichel. So that's the difference. Yes, Yonason.
Yeah, the word nefesh normally means intellect. Ruach means emotion, and the neshama means action.
Right. Oh, you mean nefesh, the ruach and neshama. Nefesh is action, ruach is emotions, and neshama is soul. Yes. Yeah. Okay, Chevra, we'll see everyone tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Seid gesund, have a great day. Psuras Toivos to everyone. Bye-bye.
Right.
Yeah.